All right. Well, welcome everyone to the traffic calming meeting for Cumberland Avenue. My name is David Greaves. I'm an engineer that works with NDOT on this program. We're meeting here on WebEx tonight virtually, and today is July 7th, 2025. Little bit of agenda. We're going to start with the program overview. Then we're going to hear from you all, kind of ask what your experience on Cumberland Avenue, maybe what inspired you all to apply for traffic calming. We're going to quickly kind of run through some of the tools in our toolbox, talk about what this program can do. Maybe if we can't do something, point you in the right direction. Then we've got a draft concept design for the street. So kind of placing some of those tools along Cumberland Avenue. That is just kind of a first pass. So we want to hear your thoughts on what you think. If there's anything maybe we're not considering that we should include in the design, we really would like your feedback that you have to offer. And then lastly, we're going to finish up by discussing kind of what happens next. So whether that be scheduling another meeting, going to the ballot, we'll hear about those details kind of toward the end. For anyone who may be watching the recording of this meeting and not joined with us live tonight, I want you to know there is a survey that's currently live, and that can be accessed at the URL shown on the right side of the screen. So that's engage.Nashville.gov/traffic-calming, all one word. The QR code that's there will also direct you to that. So for anyone who's watching a recording, or even if you're with us tonight, feel free to leave any comments there if you prefer. So jumping into the overview, what is traffic calming? The Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program focuses on residential streets, so neighborhoods with houses, apartments, things like that. And it's one that prefers physical solutions to encourage lower speeds over significant lengths. So what that means is we try to do projects that are a relatively good size and not just like single blocks at a time if we can avoid it. And one of the primary goals of this program is speed reduction, and we'll talk about why that's so important here in just a minute. There are 3 E's of traffic calming. Those are education, enforcement, and engineering. So I've got engineering bold and underlined there because that's the piece that NDOT has the greatest ability to affect with design. So what we'd like to do is have a street that sort of enforces itself, generally is a safe environment just inherently without the need for a whole lot of signage or enforcement. But we do also educate people. So this evening is one example of some public engagement we do to make sure everyone knows, why driving safely in our residential neighborhoods is important. And then enforcement is kind of in the realm of Metro Nashville Police Department. NDOT does not actually do any enforcement. So we can talk a little bit about that as well later on. Now, I mentioned that speed reduction was an important part of the traffic calming program, and this slide sort of demonstrates why. Safety and Vision Zero is one of the core goals of our Department of Transportation. And for anyone who doesn't know, Vision Zero is the idea that nobody should have to be killed or seriously injured on Nashville's streets. So there's a whole lot of different things that NDOT does in pursuit of that. Traffic calming is one kind of small piece of that overall goal. But the speed that we see on streets is directly tied to that, because the faster a vehicle is going, should it hit a pedestrian, the less chance that person has of surviving. So we see here on the left, if they're going 25 miles an hour, the chance is relatively good, 89%. But in those higher speeds, 35, 45, we see that survivability decrease pretty drastically. So that's why when we see streets that have speeds kind of in that upper range, we feel that it's important to do what we can to bring those down to a safe level. This is a really popular program. So in March of 2025, that's when Cumberland Avenue was selected for traffic calming. You were one of over 600 neighborhood streets in Nashville that had applied. So in spring, we chose 25 neighborhood streets to do projects. We choose 25 roughly every 6 months. So we do this on a recurring basis. And you can keep track of all of the streets involved in the program at Nashville's live traffic calming tracker at TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. A screenshot of that is off to the right here, and you can see that we have projects sort of all over the county. Less so in the more like rural parts, but pretty much anywhere we have neighborhoods, you'll find traffic calming. We'll get a close up of your neck of the woods in a few slides. So like I mentioned, there's a few things that the traffic calming program does. We have kind of a limited toolbox, but there's all sorts of things that Metro Nashville can handle outside of the traffic calming program. Whether that's like things like potholes, anything in disrepair. You could request things like sidewalks through this. So Hub Nashville is an important way to interface with Metro Nashville more broadly than just the traffic calming program. That can be accessed by calling 311 online at hub.nashville.gov. And they also have a smartphone app that can be downloaded if you're a frequent user. So I've got it, and it's very convenient. Moving on to how Cumberland Avenue was selected for traffic calming. So after you all applied, we went out and collected some data. We measured vehicular speeds, counted how many vehicles drove along Cumberland Avenue. We also took a look at crash history, noted whether or not you have sidewalks. You do not, as we know. And then we took a look at proximity to trip destinations. So how close are you to things like libraries or schools? I know that you're adjacent to a park, so you scored some points for that. And all of that gets rolled up into a formula that ranks all 600 plus of those applications, sort of in order of how much we think that the traffic calming could benefit that street there. So Cumberland Avenue, once we stacked all of those factors up, you landed in that top 25 to be selected. Some of the data that we collected, so the 85th percent speed was 39 miles an hour. That is surprisingly high for a street that's as short as y'all's, but it does make a little bit of sense since you're adjacent to Gallatin Pike. It's not hard to imagine that if you got used to driving relatively fast on the big arterial road, it wouldn't feel so strange to continue driving relatively fast once you've made the turn. You didn't have a super high volume. That'd be 776 vehicles the day we counted. That's on the lower end, but didn't mean you didn't get picked. And then the street width varies a little bit. It's relatively narrow from 22 feet to 25 feet. So we'll talk about how that affects some of the design decisions we have in a bit, but wanted just to let you know those are some of the things we've observed so far. And then this is the map of the project. So we're doing all of Cumberland Avenue from Gallatin Pike to Madison Park. And this is the screenshot kind of zoomed in of that live traffic calming tracker. And the dotted blue lines are projects that have already been installed. So I'm sure y'all are aware of some of these, but it looks like there's quite a bit of traffic calming in your neighborhood already. So yeah, with that, I want to just take a pause, see if y'all have any questions, but I also want to hear from you about what's going on Cumberland Avenue, sort of if you have any thoughts or things to share, this would be a good time to let me know.
It's mainly the drag racing, speeding at night during morning times. It's just, I wish we did have sidewalks, but that's another issue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mainly the speeding, real bad.
And the hill really affects that. There's a hill between like 300 and the the four-way stop at Bixler. So people really pick up speed going down the hill
Mhm.
in the direction toward Gallatin.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
I agree. We live at the top of the hill on Cumberland, right before Bixler, and it is constant, and people constantly run that stop sign. I mean, I take my dog out several times a day, and people don't even look at the stop sign. They just keep going, or they roll right to the middle of the intersection, and then they barely stop. I mean, and there's been a couple of accidents out here where they just run the red light or run the stop sign and just keep going. And especially if there's a wreck or something going on Gallatin Road, it's really gets congested, and the people parking on the street too is a problem, in my opinion.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
I don't know what the city ordinance is on parking on the street, but we got it going on. Especially at the top of that hill, with us living right at the top of the hill. Once you top that hill, there's people parked over there. It's very difficult to see if another car is coming until you get past the cars that are in the street.
Oh, I see. So there's a little bit of sight distance
Right.
issue. Got it. Created by the street parking.
Correct.
Understood.
And I would say that's to sort of underscore Miss Williams' point. I would say that that's currently even more the case given the construction that's taking place between Delaware and the Bixler four-way, sort of on the bottom of the hill there. There's a lot of construction going on there. 3 houses, couple of renovations. So that's not parking per se, it's like a resident is parking, but I think that even compounds the issue of the speeding. On the back side of the hill, we live at the base of the hill at 261 if you're going from the intersection at Bixler to Gallatin Road. And know that this one was computed, I think it's prior to when the study began, but we've had, we've had at least one car of ours that was hit by a speeder. They happened to be drunk as well, but they were also speeding. So yeah, just sort of doubling down on Miss Williams' comment.
Yeah. Got it. Well, certainly don't enjoy hearing how much difficulty you all have, been experiencing so far. And we'll talk about how we might work on a couple of those issues. I don't know if we're going to be able to totally solve the like street parking issue so much, but we can definitely target speeding and see what we can do about that stop sign. If there's any dimension of the stop sign running that is for like lack of awareness that it's there, we can work on that. There's not really a magic solution to get everyone to obey the laws, but we can do what we can to kind of make it an environment that makes it a little more conducive for stopping and driving slowly and safely and things. So why don't we move on to talk about some of the things that we can include in this design, and then we'll take a look at the specific, layout that we've drafted so far. So most of the projects that are in y'all's vicinity include what's called speed cushions. So I think y'all may have a familiarity with these, but they work similar to speed bumps. They're for a higher target speed. So we're really going for like 25 to 20 miles an hour. So they're stretched out. They're not like the kind of speed bumps you'd see in a parking lot. And then they have a limited width. So the hope there is that private cars, vehicles, light trucks, things like that will need to interact with these to move forward. And then larger vehicles such as ambulances, fire trucks, kind of those emergency vehicles, will maybe have an easier time traversing by just kind of hitting the middle of it. It's a bit of a balance. It's not like the perfect solution there, but that is sort of the intent behind using speed cushions instead of the other vertical measure in our toolbox, speed tables. You may notice these are made out of the exact same materials. So if you look at kind of the close-up on the right here, you'll see that these are constructed of many rubber modules. They're all just kind of bolted onto the pavement. And that makes them quick to install, but also quick to remove and reinstall if we need to. So if, maybe your street's getting repaved or some utility work is going on, these are, pretty flexible in their installation, which is something that allows us to do these, pretty fast once we start. Yeah, as you can see, these stretch all the way across the road, but for the reasons I mentioned just a moment ago, we tend to prefer speed cushions over speed tables just to limit the impact we have to emergency response vehicles when we can. Those two combined are definitely sort of the heavy hitters of the traffic calming program. You'll see them in most of our designs. And the reason for that is we have found that they work pretty well at achieving the program's goals. So when we did a study of a few projects before and after, we found that the average speeds on those roads came down from 31 miles an hour to 22, and the 85th percent speed came down from 37 all the way to 25. I think I maybe neglected to explain what 85th percent speed is. So that is where 85% of vehicles measured were driving that number or slower, and 15% were driving faster than that. So with y'all's 85th percent speed of 39 miles an hour, we had 15% of drivers going even faster than that. I suspect maybe the drag racing would probably fall into that category, but all that is to say, it's not like the maximum we observed. It's sort of just a statistic to communicate the spread. There are instances where we can't use speed cushions, steep hills, curves, things like that. So we also mix in a few other tools sometimes. Radar feedback signs are one of them. So I think we've all seen these before, but basically it's a solar powered device that goes underneath a regular speed limit sign, and it just reads a driver's speed and reports it back to them as they approach the sign. So the thought is that, if you're going significantly faster than the speed limit, you'd get a reminder to slow down. Now, unlike the speed cushions or speed tables, it doesn't physically do anything to somebody driving through. There's no enforcement attached to this. It's not reading license plates or taking pictures or anything. It's just for the driver's information. Even with that, we do see an average reduction of 6 to 7 miles an hour. So they don't do nothing. They do reduce speeds in neighborhoods, but without physically affecting vehicles that are driving on the road there. On streets that have excess pavement, we can kind of narrow the road with paint. So this, again, doesn't physically affect how anyone is using the roadway, but it does sort of have a psychological impact of making the road feel a little more claustrophobic. That can reduce speeds just by nature of feeling a bit more, compact, more like a neighborhood, less like a highway. This can, in some circumstances, increase the comfort for pedestrians. So if it creates a little bit of a space for walking where I'm over here on this side of the line, you're over there on that side of the line, that can be a benefit, but it's certainly not doing the same job that a sidewalk might do. Similar to the pavement narrowing, we can shrink up intersections if we see that they're larger than they need to be. Intersections that have, excess pavement can sometimes induce speeding by allowing drivers to take turns much faster than we would like them to for safety's sake. So when we shrink these up, we both narrow the turning radius, that slows down cars as they're turning. We also kind of narrow that approach space. That can help communicate that the drivers should be taking this intersection slower. So we'll sometimes propose these when we do hear that, running stop signs is a problem. And then it also helps the pedestrian experience by shortening the distance one has to cross to get from, one side of the two lanes to the other. So the picture on the top left is kind of the textbook example of this, where before these were installed, you had to walk all the way from this yellow ramp, I think upwards of like 50 feet to get to the other side. Whereas now, you're really just conflicting with cars in this 20-foot area where the two lanes are. We can also prevent on-street parking from happening at the intersections with these. Wouldn't of course apply to like the entire length of the road, but if we do see an intersection where like maybe parking is affecting sight distance, these can be used to help fix that. On wider streets, we sometimes do what's called chicanes. This is where we take a wide straight road, narrow it, and then kind of zigzag the center line back and forth. Often that comes with alternating sides of on-street parking. And it slows vehicles by forcing them to kind of maneuver left and right as they're driving along the road. I think we all know it'd be much faster to just go straight. You could pick up a lot more speed. And then if you're kind of winding back and forth, you're not able to do that as fast. So that's another way that we can induce slower speeds on streets that have a lot of pavement to work with. And then lastly, we sometimes do traffic circles. This works like bulb outs, but from the inside out rather than the outside in. And they work just like a regular roundabout where you would kind of start going counterclockwise around the circle, no matter which direction you are turning. So those are all the tools. I have flipped the slide to the draft concept, and I'll just really briefly kind of explain what we've got going on here. So between Gallatin Pike and Bixler Drive, we have a series of 3 speed cushions. You'll notice they're slightly skewed to the west side of the street. Basically what's going on there is we put this one as close to that hill as we could, but without going over the steepness limit that those cushions have. So we weren't able to get that like perfectly even spacing, but we do feel like we spread these out a pretty good amount. So I think it's between maybe 300 feet and 400 feet to this stop sign. And that's a perfectly fine distance. Between Bixler and what was this, Delaware maybe? We've got 1 cushion. If we don't have kind of that spacing that we would like, we can always just kind of put one in the middle of the block. So that's what's going on there. We didn't want to just leave this totally empty. And yeah, I want to hear what y'all think. Certainly we can reconsider things. If there's anything that I talked about in the toolbox that you'd like us to explore, I would love to know about that as well. And yeah, feel free to just offer your thoughts. I'm curious to know what y'all think.
I personally would, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Me personally, I would rather see the speed tables instead of the speed cushions, because I know on the street over, everybody just goes around them. They just, they straddle them and it doesn't really do anything. So to me, I would like to see the speed tables more like the ones on Anderson Lane, but that's just my personal preference.
Got it. Which street do you notice the problem on? I can take a look and kind of see what may be going on there.
Is it Delaware, Kyle? Because everybody, cuts through from Gallatin Road to, uses Cumberland to get over to Old Hickory or whatever, or to
Mhm.
Anderson Lane. I think it's Delaware that's the street over.
I'm gonna flip back to that map and just make sure I understand. Yeah, well, so we got DuPont Avenue
That gets
is
DuPont that's
that
over
one, and
there.
then Dueling is a couple blocks south. Um,
Must be DuPont that's got it.
Interesting. And just if you don't mind me asking, you see people like completely going around them, or is it more like one wheel on, one wheel off?
Yeah, some of them, I mean, if their car can straddle it completely, they will, but most of the time it's just one wheel on or one wheel off, but they don't necessarily slow down. They just keep going.
Got it. Yeah, and that's not necessarily if they're driving like around the speed limit, that's okay. We don't necessarily want these to be devices where everyone needs to slow down to like 5 to 10 miles an hour.
Right.
But yeah, that is good to know, and I would want to find out if DuPont is still seeing, kind of the speeding that we were hoping to quell a little bit. But yeah, duly noted. I will look into if this is a street that tables might be considered on. I can't say like yes or no right now, but
Right.
I appreciate the recommendation.
Thank you.
We'll go
I
back
had a
to
question
our-
about the plan that was on there. So I saw the speed cushions, and then there's white lines as well on the sides of the roads. Is that part of the plan?
Oh, so what we've got here is just a general image we include on all of these to make sure people know like what speed cushions look like. We may not do 3 across. We're probably not going to do a whole lot of striping. But is the striping something that y'all are excited about? I know that 25 is like wide enough that we might consider it, and 22 is sort of narrow enough that we wouldn't be accomplishing much with the stripes, but I would like to know if y'all feel good about that, or
For me,
what
not
do you think?
necessarily. For me, it's not necessarily the striping, but the white lines on the side. Just because whenever we're walking to the park or the playground, there's just no space between people's, like there's a quick drop off to the drainage and the road, and
Yeah.
it would be nice to have some, aside from having a sidewalk, which would be amazing, but having some sort of denotation of where the road and the people should be walking.
Yeah. I can definitely look into it. So 22 feet wide, we would stripe 10-foot lanes, and that would leave just about a foot on the narrowest part. I don't actually know like exactly which parts are wider and which ones are shorter, so I'll keep that in mind. And yeah, that's something that we may add to the plans.
Great.
Anyone else? One thing I guess I will bring up is the potential to look into some bulb outs at Cumberland Avenue and Bixler. Again, off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how much space we're dealing with there, so they may not be like a dramatic shrinking of the intersection. But say if you did see bulb outs in this plan, like would you be excited about those? Not excited? What do y'all think?
But could I make a comment before we go on to that?
Please.
Which is when two cars pass each other on Cumberland, the problem is that if you're standing getting your mail from the mailbox, that you're in a hit zone because that cars are gonna move away from each other has been my observation. So having a striped line on the side would at least let them know not to straddle the cushions in the direction of where you're standing. So I've had a real problem with this getting my mail when people are two cars approaching each other because they tend to spread out a little bit further away from each other. anyway.
Yeah, and closer to you, that doesn't sound ideal at
Exactly
all.
so. And it's the same thing with walking. You know, it would be nice to have what appears to be at least a safe zone to walk in. So.
Start behind
Yeah. Well, comment received. Definitely will. Yeah, I will look into this white line and see what we might design up. Did I hear somebody else start to make a comment?
Sorry about that. Were you going to say something about
Yeah,
get your
I
mail?
get nervous getting my mail if I see a car coming down the street because I just wait until they pass. And that's just my mailbox, you know.
Yeah. And of course, we have these two girls that you just saw. I don't know if you
Right.
saw them on the video, but they live right across the street from each other. So we are constantly crossing the street with little ones, and yeah, that just adds to the impact. So are we looking at the? I'm trying to look at your map and see where that middle one falls. Did you say that that's at the base of the hill?
So the third from the left
Yes.
is, it's not at the very bottom of the hill. It's sort of up the hill, but not at the steepest part. We can't put it in the really steep portion, but as soon as it gets like shallow enough to put a cushion, we did that just so we could spread those other three out to a point where you're not able to like pick up a lot of speed in between them.
Yeah.
So the hope with that is just to encourage like an even speed the whole time, and for that to be around the speed limit.
Yeah, that's great.
Sounds great.
Wanted to just circle back to the question about bulb outs, to make sure I hear from anyone who may have opinions about those. It's something we can look into, or we could not look into it, depending on what y'all think.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so I heard that there was some running of stop signs at Bixler and Cumberland, and one thing we could do to kind of tighten up that intersection a bit are bulb outs. That is these on the screen here. If y'all aren't feeling like you would like those, we'll just kind of continue rolling with this plan, look into the edge line striping. But since I heard that, y'all struggle with stop sign running, wanted to see if that was something you'd like for us to investigate a little further.
Well, it's not really a large intersection, but I mean, if you think that it would help.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
if it's not large enough that there's a whole lot of like narrowing to be done, we probably won't. And we may just look into other means of slowing
I
folks
think
down.
it's the speed down the street. That's our main concern. You know, of people. 9 o'clock at night, they're not going 39 miles an hour. They're going 60.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's certainly disturbing, and hopefully vertical devices like these will affect them the most. They're definitely not comfortable to drive over at high speeds. So yeah, we would like to see that go away for sure.
How many yards between the speed cushions like that do you have here?
That's
mostly
a good question. I'm just gonna like really roughly count as 1, 2, 3, maybe like 6 to 7 on average. We shoot for a spacing between 300 and 500 feet, depending on kind of the constraints we're working around. And we also sort of slot them in between gaps, between driveways. So we don't place these like in front of anyone's driveway. That would be quite unpleasant for them. So between the hills, spacing and driveway constraints, it's kind of like putting together a puzzle, finding the right place for these.
Yeah. Bring 'em on.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a good segue to talking about kind of how this project will move forward. So I'm going to advance to the next slide, but I can always go back to any point in the slides, at the end if there's something else to talk about. So what we're seeing now is a program flow chart. We are at that red circle, the neighborhood meeting. So the next step is to take the feedback that we've gotten from you all tonight. We're going to conduct a site visit. So we're going to go out to Cumberland Avenue, take measurements. We want to understand, exactly how wide the road is and where. Make sure that we're not putting these on like a manhole or something important like that. And then kind of measure grades, make sure we fully understand, where the hill is, how steep it is, stuff like that. And once we have all that information, we're going to finalize a set of construction plans. So once we've done that, we can either review those at a second neighborhood meeting, see what we were able to come up with, or we can post those plans online and begin the online balloting process. So before we'll build anything, we want to make sure that we send cards to everyone on the street and hear, yes, I want this project to happen, or no, I don't want this project to happen. And if 2/3 of the people that respond say, yes, I want this project to happen, it'll enter the construction queue. And then, roughly 8 months later, we'll have a project built. So I guess with that, I am curious to know, does anyone here have like a preference on a second meeting? Would you prefer to go straight to the ballot, or would you prefer to kind of circle up and review those construction plans to offer any more input?
I would like a second meeting.
Great. Well, we can go ahead and plan on that. Once we've got our design just about finalized, we'll reach back out and schedule another one of these, and you'll be able to review the plans in much greater detail than we've proposed so far. So we're gonna make sure in that second meeting we talk about the ballot in great detail. I do have those slides with me, so I'll kind of run through them quickly, and we can, if you have questions, let me know. But we'll also cover this at the next meeting before the ballot. But yeah, basically we send cards similar to the ones that invited you to the meeting tonight, and you'll be directed to NDOT's website where you'll submit your vote. There's also a number to call, so you don't have to use the computer. You can kind of call the number on the card and vote that way. And it's sent with a unique ID, so we make sure that everyone's all the responses we're getting are legit. The zone of folks that will receive those cards is just all of the lots that are touching Cumberland Avenue, minus businesses, duplicates, etc. And then churches and schools. I don't think you have either one of those on the street, but they also get a vote as well. Any questions? We can go back to any of the slides, or really anything else you think of. I'm happy to do my best to answer.
Well, since we're on the voting, could you address the property owner? It's like we do have a lot of renters on this street, and someone in our group that's been talking about this found that it has to be the property owner. And so what about if that is like a property management company or someone who doesn't live at the address on Cumberland? How do they get word about this?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So for advertising this meeting and for sending out those cards, we're pulling the records available from Metro Nashville's Register of Deeds. So that is the property owner's mailing address that we have access to. And those are the group of people that are voting on the project. If anyone is renting and they support the project or don't support the project, we would love to get their feedback. They're able to offer the same things that you all have offered tonight. But when it comes to the like final say voting, it's the group of property owners that
Yeah.
we're reaching out to.
Just realized I live in that cabin. My son-in-law owns my house. Mhm. Yeah.
I have a question. The beginning of the meeting, you started recording. Is the recording available at all?
Yes. So after we're done here, I'm going to send the recording to NDOT, and they will post it on Metro Nashville's YouTube page. So within maybe like a week or so, anyone who Googles Cumberland Avenue traffic calming ought to be able to find it pretty quickly.
Great, thank you.
Sure thing. Well, it sounds like we're out of questions. If you think of anything, you're more than welcome to reach out. My email address is on the screen here. That's david.greaves@kinley-horn.com. I'll ask that you also copy NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. And more feedback can be submitted online at that live survey that's ongoing. That can be anyone, even not residents of the street. Just we want to hear from anyone who has something to say, and that can be accessed by engage.nashville.gov/traffic calming, and then finding Cumberland Avenue, since we've got a couple of these going on at the moment. And any final thoughts? If not, thank you all so much for your time this evening, and yeah, just let me know if there's anything else before we wrap up.
Well, a great meeting, David. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course. Y'all have a great night.
You as
You
well.
too.